Good evening, gentlemen. I am sure we all had quite a great day. Alright, so welcome to tonight's online session. I still remain your host, O.O. Stevens. And tonight we are going to be looking at the topic property law practice and taxation. We are going to be looking at the topic property law practice and taxation. It is in the course known as property law practice. Now, what is taxation? Taxation involves a monetary imposition on persons, properties, taxations to yield public revenue. If you have heard of, they say that somebody is mandated to pay tax. That is what we are discussing now. So we now say now that tax can be paid by persons, tax can be paid on properties, tax can be paid on transactions that parties have actually entered in order for the government to get a revenue. Revenue means the money that enters into the fund or the purse of the government. Now, it is worthy of note that taxation is not voluntary. It's not whether you like or not. You must like, you must want. So the government must mandate you to want to pay tax. And we have various types of taxes that can be imposed. We have what is called stamp duties. We have value added tax. Don't worry, we're going to be discussing them exhaustively. We have stamp duties. We have value added tax, the one they call VAT. We have capital gains tax. We have land use charge. We have registration fees. We have personal income tax. We have companies income tax. We have tenement rates. We have consent fees. We have estate duties. Now, but before we go into discussing these taxes one by one, let us first of all look at the collecting authorities. That is the authorities that are responsible for collecting each, and also when the need for a particular authority to collect will arise. Now, the federal government, through the Federal Inland Revenue Service, collects the following. The federal government, through the FIRS, known as Federal Inland Revenue Service, collects the following taxes. It collects the company income tax. It collects personal income tax of residents of FCT Abuja, people who are living in Abuja. It is the federal government that collects their own tax, that is personal income tax. It also collects stamp duties on corporate bodies and residents of FCT Abuja. So it collects stamp duty. Don't worry, we are going to know what a stamp duty is. So once a company is involved, it is the federal government that collects stamp duties from such a company, and also where it involves individuals in Abuja that are living in FCT Abuja, it is also the federal government that collects it. Now, we also have capital gain tax on residents of FCT and corporate bodies. So a company, wherever the company is, even if it's not in FCT, it is the federal government that collects, and a resident of FCT is also the federal government that collects capital gain tax from them. Also, we have value added tax. The federal government is the one that collects value added tax. Don't worry, you're going to know what these taxes mean. Now, the next collecting authority is the state government. The state government, through the Board of Internal Revenue of that particular state, can collect the following taxes. One is personal income tax on individuals. Two is capital gain tax between individuals. Once a capital gain tax involves a corporate body, the state cannot collect it. Also, stamp duty on instruments executed by individuals. Consent fees, registration fees, and estate duties are collected by the state government. Now, while the local government councils collect what is known as tenement rates in other states, but Lagos State, it is called land use charge. It's the local government council that collect those ones. So, tenement rates, tenement is spelled T-E-N-E-M-E, T-E-N as an N for not, E-M for mango, E-N-T. So T-E-N-E-M-E-N-T, tenement rate, or you can call it land use charge if it is in Lagos. All right, what is stamp duties? What is stamp duties? These are regulated by Stamp Duties Act, and it comes in play at the perfection stage of a conveyancing. That is when it comes in play. I believe by now you people are aware of the perfection stage of a contract of sale. You know, you can still remember the name CSR, consent, stamping, and registration. Now, this particular type of tax is paid on a document. is paid on a document once people have entered into a transaction. So once a document is registrable, then once a transaction is registrable, then a particular tax is paid on the document that is evidencing that transaction, and that particular tax that is paid on that document is known as stamp duties. So this is also known as document tax. You can also call it document tax. And the type of documents that can be stamped, or the type of document that stamp duty can be paid on, are assignment, power of attorney, that is where it is registrable, leases, mortgages, even agreement to sell can be also stamped. So, and the two ways of calculating stamp duties are, we have fixed duty and we have ad valorem. But let us first of all treat ad valorem. In ad valorem, the computation is based on the value of the property. If the property is maybe 100 million, the way it will be computed will be different from if the property is 100,000 naira. That is called ad valorem. So it is paid based on the value of the property. So the higher the consideration, that is, the higher the amount that the property is bought, the higher the amount to be paid on the stamp duty. That is the implication. Also, we have fixed duty. The fixed duty now is paid without minding the value of whatever thing is happening. So it is like a flat rate. It's like a flat rate that is paid, and it is always payable on documents like power of attorney. If you are appointing somebody to act for you, that is power of attorney, and a state where power of attorney is registrable, you know very well that this will have nothing to do with money transferring hands in most instances. So you just pay a particular amount that is known as fixed duty. So those are the two ways that the stamp duty can be calculated. We have ad valorem and we have fixed duty. And we told you that ad valorem is in accordance with the value of the property, while fixed duty is just a flat rate. All right, let us look at capital gains tax. I could have loved us to save this capital gains. Okay, let's just look at it. So that now this is a tax that is charged on the gains that are accrued to a disposal of assets. For instance, if you sell your land and you make gain from it, you are going to pay what is called capital gain tax. So if you make any transaction, if you engage in any transaction and you make a gain, you'll be paying what is known as capital gain tax. For instance, if you sell, if you lease a property, if there is any compulsory acquisition or disposition of any asset, then you pay capital gain tax. But you don't pay capital gain tax when it is a mortgage. You don't pay, because mortgage is like a loan. Somebody is using his money to borrow money from you. So you don't pay capital gain tax when it is a mortgage. You don't also pay capital gain tax on devolution of personal representative asset of a deceased person. For instance, when executor is transferring the property that has been given to a beneficiary to him, you don't say that this beneficiary has made a gain, then you pay capital gain tax. No, capital gain tax are not paid on that, and also on other type of transactions, capital gain tax are not paid. But how then do we calculate a capital gain tax? How do you calculate a capital gain tax? Now, before you calculate a capital gain tax, you must first of all remove what we call allowable income and expenses. You must remove what we call allowable income and expenses before you now get what is called chargeable gain. Now, what are we talking about? Assuming I bought a piece of land at the rate of 100 naira. And I use 50 naira to build on this piece of land. And after building on this piece of land, when I am about to sell the house that I built on it, I paid a lawyer 20 naira. Then I also paid a state surveyor 10 naira. You notice now that we have about 180 naira. Both the money I used to buy it and the money I used to build the house on it, and the money I paid the lawyer and all those stuff. Now, assuming I sell this land or this particular property, at the end of the day I sell it 250 naira, it is going to be 250 minus 180. You will notice that 250 minus 180 will give you 70, because I am going to deduct the amount of money I used to buy the land from the 250 I sold it. I will deduct the amount of money I used to build the house, which is 50 naira. I will deduct the amount of money I paid the lawyer. I will deduct the amount of money I paid the estate valuer. You will now notice now that from the 250 I sold the property, I have removed 180 naira, which was the expenses I made. Now whatever thing is remaining, which is the 70 naira now, is now called chargeable gain. It's called chargeable. So it is from the 70 naira now that I'm going to pay my tax, and my tax from this 70 naira is just 10%. So 10% of 70 naira now is my capital gain tax, and 10% of 70 naira is now 7 naira. Is now 7 naira. So that is the law. So what we are talking about now is that I'm not going to be paying my capital gain tax from the 250 I sold the property. No, I'll be paying my capital gain tax when I have removed the expenses I made. That is known as allowable expenses, allowable expenditure. So that one is not calculated. So after removing it, whatever thing that is remaining is called chargeable gain. It is a gain that I can now charge my tax on. So when I now charge my tax on this gain, now the 10% of that chargeable gain is now what is going to be my capital gain tax, and 10% of 70 naira, which I have removed the 180 from. Sorry, 10%, yes, which I've removed 180 from 250, and I now have 70 naira. The 10% of 70 naira is now going to be my capital gain tax. The gain I made from this particular transaction is 70 naira. It is not 250. So my capital gain tax is going to be 7 naira. So that is the law. All right, let us look at value added tax. Let us look at value added tax. This is a tax payable on goods and services. The tax payable on goods and services. Professional services rendered by professionals like legal practitioners come into play here. So the tax that professionals like doctors, like engineers, like lawyers, for the services they render is known as value added tax, and they ordinarily pay 5% of whatever they earn from it. 5% of their professional services is paid as a VAT, is paid as value added tax. Most of the advanced persons that are in this class will appreciate what a VAT means, and most of their offices normally pay. Most law firms pay. Most estate surveying firms, they pay what is known as VAT. So VAT is the money you pay to federal government for being a professional in your right, and it is the federal government that receives this one. So even if you are in Bauchi State government cannot collect VAT from you. It is going to be the State Inland Revenue Service is going to be Federal Inland Revenue Service that will collect VAT from you. All right, we have personal income tax. We have personal income tax. This is a tax payable by individuals or a group or business name. Now, this personal income tax is mainly that type of tax that is being removed from your salary by a government when they are about to pay you at the end of the month. You will notice that your salary has been that something has been removed from your salary. So that is how you actually pay personal income tax. Now, an individual may be assessed on the pay as you earn scheme, or upon payment of tax. A tax clearance is usually given to such a person. So as you are earning, you may be paying, or anytime you come and pay your tax as an individual. This one now has nothing to do with being a professional. So long as you are earning, whether you are on salary scale or anything, you pay what is called personal income. Personal income tax is the income that comes to you as a person. The income that enters your hand as a person, you are going to be paying a tax on them. That's what we are talking about here. And the relevant authority or state where the personal income tax is payable is determined by residence. That is where the person lives and not where he works. So the particular state that will be collected, assuming you're working in Bauchi and you are living in let's say Lagos. So where you will be paying your personal income tax will be in Lagos. It is not going to be in Bauchi. That is why we say that the relevant authority where the personal income tax will be paid will be determined by where the person is living, that is residence, and not where the person is working. All right, and personal income tax of residents of FCT is often collected by the Federal Inland Revenue Service. I talked about it when I was discussing about collecting authorities. Now, company income tax. Company income tax is with respect to the money that enters the hand of a company. Company income tax is with respect to the money that enters the hand of the company. That is any money that enters the income of a company. Now remember that the way to calculate these taxes will be dependent on after the company might have removed whatever thing they have spent. So the income is presumed to be from the angle of the gain they made, but it does not necessarily have to do with selling anything. So the gain they made, that is where the tax is going to be calculated from. So once a company is involved and there is an income, the tax they pay on that is known as company income tax, and it is often paid to the federal government through the Federal Inland Revenue Service. Now we have consent fees. These are fees made in obtaining the consent of the governor of a state. Remember, if you still remember your CSR at the perfection stage of a deed, you remember that you get the consent of the governor. So that consent of the governor is not free of charge. You pay a fee for you to get the consent of the governor. So that fee you're paying is known as what? Consent fees. And it is only the states of the federation that collects consent fees on behalf of the governor of that particular state. Now we have registration fees. Registration fees, you pay it at the land registry of the state when you go for the final stage of the perfection. If you go for the final leg of perfection stage, which is R, known as registration, you pay what is called registration fee. So registration fee is paid at the land registry of each of the government of the state. Now we have estate duty. This is payable in respect of the deceased real estate, real or personal properties. Now, one thing I didn't tell you, I am reserving to tell it to you now, is that as these people known as executors are really coming to the probate registrar to come and get probate and get letters of admission, please, it is not free of charge. So they are going to first of all compile the records of the man's property, and as they come, it is going to be valued. We know how much the estate is valued. Then you will pay 10%. You guys are going, the government is going to take 10% of the entire worth of the estate. So don't think that as you're coming to get probate, coming to get letters, that is free of charge. No, the government also has something to take. Besides, everything you earned is the government that gave you the opportunity to earn it. So you will see your from your estate, government is still going to get something. So that thing that is that money that is paid to the government with respect to having the permission of administering the estate of a dead person is known as estate duty, and it is often 10% of the gross value of the estate. It's often 10% of the entire value of the estate. All right, what is tenement rate? This is payable annually on buildings situated within a particular local government area. It is also known as property tax in some areas, and it is also called land use charge in Lagos State. For instance, if there is a clubhouse that is situated in a particular place, the local government council, the one we call area council in FCT, the local government council can be visiting that clubhouse either every year or every month to be collecting a particular amount of money for them to be situated there. That is called tenement rate. You can call it property tax, or you can call it land use charge if it were to be in Lagos. Now, the consideration, that is the amount of money that is collected as tenement rate, is determined by the location of the property. That is, where is the property located? Also, the purpose for which the property will be put. What is the property being used for? And also the nature of the property. So, for instance, now if some people are using a particular piece of land as park, as their motor park for their transport company, the local government council of that particular region can be coming every month or every year or every 3 months to be collecting a particular amount of money from them for using a land that is in that place. So these are the type of things that are known as tenement rate. Now, what we're talking about now is what Mr. A does, and tenement rate is collected from him, may be different from what Mr. B does, and the amount of money that will be collected will not be determined on what they do. A person who is running a clubhouse that makes something like 1 million naira every day may be different from, the thing collected from him may be different from what will be collected from another person who is not running a clubhouse and is probably making 1,000 naira, 2,000 or 10,000 naira every day. So the consideration and the assessment of what will be the rate to be paid by each of these people will be determined by what are they doing, where are they located, and what is the nature of the property that they are doing, and what's also the nature of their business. So that is what will determine what a tenement rate is. I told you it can be called property tax, it can be called tenement rate, but if it's in Lagos State, it is known as land use charge, and it is the local government area that collects this one. So the collecting authority of tenement rate is the local government area that collects it, the one you call in Abuja area council. So there are those that collect tenement rate. So the states, their hands are out of tenement rate. The federal government, their hands are out of tenement rate. This one is within the jurisdiction of the local government council. And on that, we are going to be drawing the curtain on the final topic of property law practice. And until we meet again, you have the kindest and the best of wishes from the stables of O.O. Stevens Tutorial Center. Do have a pleasant and blissful night rest.